Welcome to the podcast where relationships, confidence, and determination all converge into an amazing, heartfelt experience. This is Speaking from the Heart.
Welcome back to episode number 194 of Speaking from the Heart. Today we have Andrea Fung with us, and Andrea is a former lawyer turned transformational coach and energy healer for corporate professionals and soulful entrepreneurs based in Australia and Malaysia. With 6 years of experience in the legal sector, she has intimate encounters with the wide spectrum of challenges faced by high-achieving professionals and is now dedicated towards helping these ambitious business professionals achieve fulfillment and find their purpose in their lives. As a certified NLP practitioner and Thetahealer, Andrea adopts a holistic approach in empowering her clients to unearth the wellspring of happiness within themselves. And boy, oh boy, do we have a little bit of a firecracker here on today's episode, and you're going to see why. And I had so many great conversations after this interview today with Andrea that I really got to understand what motivates her, what empowers her to help these individuals move from the place that they are at, point A, all the way to point Z, and beyond for that matter, especially when it comes to her coaching. But the interesting dynamic that I don't think I've ever had on this show thus far is how somebody, especially turning their career from a lawyer into being able to help others, is really not that far of a stretch. But when you think about all the things that a lawyer does and all the things that a coach does, you start to see that some of the natural progression, the tendency of her wanting to help others, gaining those deeper skills, is what really flushes out in her story today. But more than anything, I could see that in her eyes there was a power, this loving and healing that she wants to help others in achieving, really set the tone for not only this conversation, but for all things that she is achieving even to this day. There's never really a right time to jump into a new career, especially with both feet planted forward. But even then, if you learn how to be joyful in those moments, I think that you'll find that it can be fun, even when you walk past fear itself to achieve what you ultimately were meant to do. And I think by doing this, not only will allow you to gain that perspective, but allow you to pulsate through all kinds of different types of things that are happening in your life and seek success. But with that, let's go to the episode. All right, we're here with Andrea Fung. Andrea, thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
Hey, thank you for having me on your show, Josh. I am so excited to go raw, to go vulnerable, to go deep, share some wisdom, have some fun. Let's do this.
I had this feeling that there would be a little bit of back and forth today before we even started recording. And for the listeners, I've already feel like I've had an interview and we're doing round 3 now of the interview. So this will be a very interesting conversation to say the least. Andrea, I've already let the listeners know a little bit about your background, but I got to say to you, and I've told you this when we were having our 40-minute discussion, you are a version of me that I could have possibly taken many, many, many moons ago. I had an interest of being a lawyer before I did my career, which I worked for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, doing some procurement work, doing some other things for the last 14, 15 years. You took a track in your life that is completely different than what I had taken as a choice. But I love that there's some similarities. So I was wondering, tell us a little bit about why you were vested in becoming a lawyer in the first place, because I'm always interested about why people want to do something like that. And then they turn into a coach. That in itself is very exciting to hear. So I'll let you tell that story.
Would you believe that the reason I chose law is because I just didn't want to do math?
Is it really that simple?
It
I
was
set up that long explanation only to tell me is because you didn't want to do math.
Well, it was 2 points. So I grew up in this like strict Asian Chinese household where you're either a professional or you're nothing at all. So my options for being a professional were lawyer, engineer, doctor, investment banker, and something else that I can't remember. Probably, I thought about doing veterinary science, but I love animals so much and I couldn't bear to see sick animals every single day. I think I would just be crying all day, all night. So I thought, okay, look, out of all of those things, law would be the one where I wouldn't have to specialize or major in additional math. And I am terrible at math. Talk about defying stereotypes. So that's why I decided to do law. And I thought I love talking. I have a really great personality, great gift of the gab. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do law. And so I wanted to help people though. And coming from Malaysia at that time where I felt like women were very much treated like second-class citizens, I wanted to do something that would help women achieve whatever it is that they wanted to achieve, to create the life that they wanted. And I felt like I could do it in Australia. So I worked in family law, I worked in domestic violence, I also worked in child protection. What I didn't realize was how heavy that work was emotionally. And I found that I was taking work home with me. I don't mean like the actual physical files, but emotionally, the tension was there. So I actually quit law once before after the first 3 years. I was actually made redundant. And I think subconsciously, I must have manifested that because the day that I was told that I was made redundant, I booked my flights to Brazil and I thought I'm going to go on this long sabbatical. And I did. One of the best days and the beginning of an amazing journey of soul searching. I was hoping to look for career inspiration. I found everything, but not that. So I came back and I thought, okay, let's do law again. But instead of doing family law, I did wills and estates. And when the pandemic hit, I realized, wow, if I didn't have the parties, if I didn't have friends, if I didn't have all the debauchery, I would actually be really miserable. And so I thought, what else can I do? I had no idea. I just know that law wasn't it. So I decided to pivot to something completely different, like being a social media influencer. Can you imagine that?
Well, we are of the generation that if we can find some sort of niche to have a social platform and be an influencer, that's the way to go. And I think of people even in the gaming industry, Markiplier, Mr. Beast, PewDiePie, all those different
Yes.
people. I grew up with those. That was sort of my millennial upbringing that I got to watch those people evolve into what
Mhm.
they are today. And even then, some people would say, oh, they're older now and there's other people. And Josh, you're dating yourself by saying those people. But let's be real. You could be any social influencer just by simply clicking a button. And that's how
Yes.
easy it is anymore. Andrea, I'm kind of curious because you said earlier, going back to your lawyer career, that you
Mhm.
took a lot of these things home with you. Can you explain what you mean by that? Is it the burdens that families that you worked with that you took home? Was it something more that you were carrying? I'm kind of curious as to what you were exactly taking home with you.
The thing that I was taking home was the burden of wanting to do a good job, number one. And number two, because what I see day in, day out are relationships breaking apart and children caught in the crossfire. And I wanted to do the very best that I can, even if not for the parents who are actively fighting each other at the expense of their children. I wanted to do the best that I can to provide the best option available for the children that are caught in the crossfire. So those were the things that I was actually bringing home. And it's not easy to deal with hearing of incidents and accounts of partners assaulting each other in front of their children, of plates of food being thrown and smashed right next to the head of an 8-year-old. So those are things that I would hear and work with almost every single day. And as much as the intention was to the best of my ability and to the best of my knowledge at the time was pure, I think I did not have the nervous system required and the deeper why to actually work in that environment.
In other words, you're saying that you didn't have the skills or the equipment to be able to do that. Is that true?
I can say that, yes. I could say that I have the legal knowledge, but in terms of the life skills required to do it, learning how to regulate my nervous system, for example, that was something that I did not have. And when it comes to things like that, in anything it is that we're actually doing, it's important to have our why beneath our why to help push us through, to give us that grit, to take us through and weather through the more difficult times as and when they come through, because everyone in their career has had to weather through difficult times, right? And I think I didn't have that why beneath my why.
I even admitted to you, my listeners know this because I share this consistently.
Yes.
The why that I keep on working through is to try to figure out what are some of the barriers, what are some of the things that we
Mhm.
are trying to process that allow us to go from point A to point B. And that has been some of my struggle. even as a coach, we all have struggles with trying to even work through our own shit, as I like to call it. But even for you, you say to me that you felt like you needed those skills. What was your moral compass to really do that? You didn't have to do that. You had a lawyer degree. That was what you were bound to do. You were there to legally represent. Why dig deeper?
I guess deep within myself, I always knew that I wanted to do something meaningful with my life. So for as long as I could remember, I have always wanted to find a job or find a career or be engaging in work that felt like this is what I came here to do. This is what I was born to do, because we spend more than half of our lives working. It did not make sense to me to be working in a job or in a career or whatever activity it is that's taking up all that time. It didn't make sense to be investing that much time in something that wasn't fulfilling or meaningful.
Well, then with that said, why pick a coach?
I didn't actually pick
Oh,
coaching.
wow.
I started
Okay.
off,
So wait,
yeah,
so there was something in between before you became a coach.
there's things in between before I became a coach.
Now I found the butter. Okay. So you need to trim this for us because sometimes
Mhm.
people think, oh, well, okay, fine. So she wanted to help people. She automatically became a coach. So you were still on this soul searching quest to essentially get to where you're at. So I wonder if you could walk us through what this looked like for us.
Okay, so let's do a brief recap. First and foremost, I knew that I wanted to help people, right? And secondly, I also wanted to be engaging in work that I felt like this is what I was born to do. So at the time when I was working as a lawyer, I picked law because number one, I didn't want to do math. And number two, it was one way of helping people. But honestly, when you're like 19, what do you know about life?
Oh,
Right?
everything, according to some other teenagers I've talked to.
Okay, all right. So in the life that I grew up, even it was privileged in some ways and absolutely horrible in so many other ways, I didn't know enough about life. Okay.
Mhm.
If you don't know enough about life, you are never going to be able to dig deep enough because you have not accessed those deeper parts of yourself, right? You can't find the why beneath the why. So when I decided to quit law for the second and final time, I didn't know what it is that I wanted to do. So this was end of 2020. And I made a list of 100 things that I would do for free forever. And the top three was to be hanging around in exotic beaches in various bikinis, sponsored, obviously, because influencer, and to spread messages of positivity. And so I thought, let's take the social media influencer route. And at that time, I had decided from this point onwards, I am going to follow strictly what brings me joy. Not what I think is going to be the best logical option, not what I think what other people would say or what my parents would say is the best, most efficient route to success. I was going to do what brought me joy, even if it didn't make sense, even if it's just like a small decision of whether I want to have a milkshake or have water tonight, just something like that. So from that point onwards, I went from social media influencer. And then a few people approached me saying, hey, I love what you're doing with your account. Can you help me manage my account? So then I pivoted to become a social media manager. Did I know anything about how to become a social media manager 3 months in? No. But within that 3 months, I met someone who was a digital nomad coach. And I thought, I want to help women experience transformative travel as well. But how can I help women build up a business in the midst of a pandemic during 2021 when I was still building up my own business? So obviously, safe to say that business tanked
Mhm.
horrifically.
Mhm.
But I thought, okay, you know what? I decided I'm going to not surrender. Well, I can say surrender. I'm going to throw my hands up in the air and I'm going to surrender to things that I cannot control because I was exhausted. I was burnt out. And I went interstate on a holiday to Sydney. And when I was in Sydney, I happened to open up my LinkedIn account after months. And there was an offer from this director of a coaching institute here in Brisbane offering me a job
Wow.
to coach his clients. That came out of nowhere. I literally exchanged 2 comments with him on one post about quantum shifting. And suddenly an opportunity landed on my lap. And the thing is, if I had opened up my inbox a month or two prior, I would have turned that job down because I was exhausted, I was burnt out, and I just didn't have capacity to think clearly or to even see what an opportunity that was because I would have still been focused on building my own business. But because I decided to surrender and just focus on what brought me joy, what brought me happiness, what gave me rest, suddenly it happened. right when I had capacity to take on the opportunity. So next thing you know, I went from 0 clients to 10 for the coming year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
I sit back in astonishment because all it took was essentially using social media, engaging in conversation to land you a job. So there you go. That's the power of social media, using it for a positive force and being able to do something. Because some people are very skeptical. They think about it as being a negative influence. Here it is. It's landing you a job. I love that. You got your first 10 clients. What happened next?
What happened next was this particular director had a bit of a disagreement with me and another one of the coaches that we were working together with in terms of how he wanted to restructure his coaching institute, right? In terms of the business plan and stuff like that. So in the end, we decided to part ways. And right around the time that we parted ways, I was learning NLP. My brother, whom I wasn't very close with at the time, invited me to go over to his place to help him nanny because he wasn't able to find a nanny for his 2 kids at the time. And so it was an opportunity to bridge this almost estranged family relationship. We didn't have a bad relationship. There was no ill will. We just didn't have much of a relationship. That's all. There was no animosity. And so I saw this as an opportunity. I thought, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go. And from that point onwards, I had opportunities to heal my entire family relationship. And when I say heal entire family relationship, what I mean to say is that prior to this point, every day that I spend with my parents or at home, there's going to be some sort of breakout of World War III. That was how bad it was. That was honestly how bad it was. And within that year, this was 2022 at this point, within 2022 and 2023, all my family relationships were healed just like that. And while I was in that state, I was not actually able to work on my business because I was with family and they took up a lot of my time. They took up a lot of my energy. I was feeling quite stuck as well. And this is where the next level of expansion came in. When I was stuck and I did not have the capacity to work on my business, I felt terrible. I felt really, really terrible. And I felt like I was a failure. I felt like, why can't I do both? And then I thought, you know what? I lost focus. I stopped focusing on what brought me joy. And at that time, I said to myself, what was going to bring me joy? Oh, I'm going to go look for my soul family. So I hired a theta healer, a trance channeler who also did theta healing. And from that point onwards, I experienced theta healing with her. And my entire vibration just lifted. I felt so light. I had beliefs of I am not enough removed. And I had beliefs of I am lovable and I am enough installed within my being. And that is how Theta Healing found me. And I signed up to all the courses for Theta Healing for the rest of the year. And all of that, doing all those courses to be certified as a Theta Healer, it was the equivalent of doing 10 years of therapy.
Wait, you did 10 years of therapy equivalent to Theta Healing, and you did that in less than a year?
In less than a year, in 3-4 courses.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, that is
Exactly.
incredible. Yeah.
Exactly. And the thing is that with all of these things, I want to give you more of a deeper perspective of how magical this whole journey is. Prior to becoming a coach, I did not know that there were such coaches. I thought coaches was like soccer coaches, volleyball coaches. I didn't know that such coaches existed. And same with theta healing. Like I can't even research something like that because I don't know that they exist. It's like having 2 physicians talking to me about the physics of how balls bounce. I don't know what that is.
Yes.
So how can I research something that I know nothing about and that I know nothing of its existence? But what I did was with every single step of following my joy, following my curiosity, every time I hit an emotional snag, I allowed myself to heal. And every single time that happened, I opened myself up to everything that is for me, to everything that is possible for me. And I allowed myself to take the next step, to take that leap of faith into the unknown. And that is when magic happens.
I was going to say, so the magic that happened is that you decided you wanted to be a transformational coach, which is now today why you're offering what you're offering: ascension,
Yes.
mentoring, corporate meditations, transformational coaching. True?
Yes. Yes.
Out of the experiences that you've had with other coaches and what you even do now, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect that you have created for yourself? Meaning, Was it about the self-love that helped you propel that forward? Was it about the healing that you've experienced with your family that really got you over that rock? What would you say was the number one thing? That was the switch that said, I'm going all in.
It was taking the leap of faith.
Hmm.
That is the main thing. Lots of people, I think they are so focused on healing because they feel that they have to be perfect to a certain way, to a certain degree before they are ready to do this, or certain things in our circumstances have to be right. But there is never really a right time. And when it comes to big things, and especially when it's things that are unknown to you, you are never going to feel proper ready. How you know that you are ready is when there is an opportunity that drops in front of you and you take the leap of faith and you take that opportunity. Because if you were not ready, that opportunity would not even drop to begin with.
Do you think the Theta Healing Coach was one of those things that just dropped as one of those opportunities? And if you don't believe that, you can tell me. Maybe it was just a sheer coincidence, but from the way you're describing it, it sounds like to me that this was set up for you to not only walk away from all that past that you were just talking about earlier, but allowed you to get onto the path of what you really enjoy doing, which is helping others. Is that fair to say?
Oh, it is absolutely 100% accurate. All of the things that dropped, all the opportunities that dropped, if I were to look at everything in the past, I can see how every single breadcrumb, even though on its own in isolation seemingly makes zero sense, okay? But when you follow each breadcrumb, at some point, 6 months down the line, a year down the line, 2 years down the line, you're going to see how all of the dots connect. And that Theta Healer, she's actually a trance channeler. I didn't even know what theta healing is. And I didn't
What
know
is
that
theta healing, by the way, before you even go any further? I mean, just for my listeners, because you said it a few times and I meant to ask you earlier. So just catch us up with that. What would that entail if I went to Theta Healer?
Theta healing is basically quantum therapy. So we look into your energy centers, we dig deep into your subconscious beliefs, and then we remove the programs that no longer serve you. So for example, if you felt that you were worthy and fully believed that you were worthy and deserving of success and that you could have it, you would take every leap of faith. You would take all the steps. There would be not barely any fear. Or even if there was, you wouldn't care anyway, because you know that this success is mine. This success is for me and I'm deserving of it. I'm worthy of it, right? But then because of the subconscious beliefs that have been imposed on us from the time we were young, we believe that we need people. We are afraid of rejection. We're afraid of abandonment. We believe that we are not enough because we've been conditioned to require people's approval. So if we removed all of those beliefs and installed in all these more healthy beliefs that will enable you to advance towards success, to advance towards wholeness, wouldn't that make the journey so much more easeful and so much more joyful as well?
Andrew, what do you think has to happen for your life to be even more joyful than what it is now? Because let's be real. And I was being real with you before we started the show.
Yeah.
And I've been real consistently with my listeners as I approach these magic numbers of 200 that flash across my eyes for my show. I've learned a lot, even in these discussions, about what it means to work through my stuff and to actually do some of the things that I advocate for my listeners to also do the same, because there are essentially breadcrumbs for them too. You said it so accurately that there are little hints that if you're willing to just pay attention to them, they are staring at you. Although they're very, very small, you got to squint sometimes to look at it.
Yes.
What is it that you have to yet do to attain even more joy than you already are? Or have you attained it?
I feel like I have attained it.
But you know what? That's okay too, because that means to me that what you're doing, what your program is also transforming not only just yourself, but also your clients.
Yes, absolutely. And look, I say that I have attained that joy, but it's not to say that there is no more joy to be attained. There are so many layers to us to dig deeper. And the deeper we go, the greater joy we get to access. So I think the first step, I feel, to attaining this joy is to understand that being this joyful, being this state of love, it's actually our natural state. We don't have to do anything to attain more, to be more recognized or whatever to attain this joy. You can access it yourself by accessing yourself, digging deep within your beliefs, shifting and peeling back the layers to find the joy that is your natural state. And that can look and sound like anything. For you, Josh, I feel like when you are asking me these questions and when you're conducting this podcast, I feel that this is one form of an expression of your joy. Because I feel that happiness.
Well, you are right, because I like seeing my guests squirm a little bit, but that's okay. That's a whole other discussion in itself. But no, to be truthfully serious, because I know that I could joke around a bit and I can have that kind of fun, because I feel a lot more sense of comfort and relaxation knowing that I can have that kind of that reciprocation, knowing that that I'm just kidding around.
Yes.
Part of this for me is that I really do believe that everybody's entitled to this best version of themselves. That's something that is the ultimate mission of what I try to do too. Sometimes people don't see it in the subjective ways that you're describing. Some of them want concrete, empirical, objective analysis to be able to say, this is what I'm able to do to achieve that. But that's just one modality. It doesn't mean that my modality is wrong or your modality is wrong. It's just the way, the process of doing it. So to measure joy, how would you say for somebody that wants to attain that same joyfulness that you have right now, which is obviously the epiphany of it, that ability to create that, and you can manifest that, especially with all kinds of things that you're doing. How can someone that has no experience, has no idea what we've been talking about, be able to start that process with even using some of the techniques that you've talked about?
Well, we could start at the very beginning. Why don't you create a list of 100 things that you would do for free forever? And look at the top 5, look at the top 10, and allow yourself to do that. And this is something that we live in this modern, chaotic, busy world and culture of hustle. At the beginning, it's going to be quite hard because this is something that you have to make time to do.
Wait a moment, I need to do time with this? Bullshit. I don't want to do any of that. And I say that with all earnest because some people say, well, I don't have that kind of time. But I even say to my clients, it's about what you really want. If you really, really want this, you would put the time aside to make this a priority. And I've had to say that to myself, is that if I really, really want this, I would put that time to walk into not only what I need to achieve, but also what it is that I ultimately want to see as the goal. When you say time, I want you to be really earnest with you. How long did it take you to find that joy? Be real with us.
If I started, let's say early 2021, and I hit peak joy, like full homecoming peak joy last year in, let's say, May 2023.
The start of this podcast. How interesting. Go on.
Yeah. So let's say it took me 2.5 years of consistent walking in the dark, in the unknown, following the breadcrumbs, allowing myself to hit every single emotional snag and go through not over, not circumventing, not under, go through every single fear, go through working through the vibrations of shame and grief and fear to get to this point. I would say 2.5 years. But that was my journey. Everyone's journey is different. Yeah.
That is different, but part of it is that was your timetable, and that's okay that it took you that long, because look at you now. You're doing things that other people would be envious of. They are happy about the fact that they see this. Maybe some of them are not happy because they're like, dang it, she's doing that. But part of it is they're jealous. And maybe it's a jealousy factor. Maybe it's something else. But to me, you don't have to be jealous. That's a human basic instinct that sometimes we need to say, that's not what we're trying to say. That's not what we're listening to today. We need to push that aside. And obviously, you've had to work through a lot of things to get to that point. So let's just break it down for what it is. Do you often feel, and I am looking at your website as I even asked this, because a lot of the questions that you ask are even questions that I even sometimes put my clients through to kind of understand it, to get a kind of a profile of it. I mean, do you fear failure or making mistakes with trying to achieve this joy that you're even working on now? I mean, obviously, you're saying to us that you've attained it, but you make mistakes, right?
Yeah. All of us make mistakes. But in saying that, Is it really a mistake and is it really failure, or is it just a feedback loop? You try one way and it's like, oh, okay, so maybe this is not giving you the joy or the excitement or the result that you were hoping or expected. So, okay, so this is not the way. Try the next one. So what?
I think that's a big part of it, is that you have to know that it's okay to try. It's okay to try again. Sometimes it takes multiple times to try in order to find something that really adapts with you. With that said, Andrea, we're almost at the end of our time. I can't believe how quickly it has flown by, but I have to say this to you. I really, really earnestly curious about this.
Mm-hmm.
You seem to me as somebody that really is in touch with themselves, meaning you manifest something that comes from the inside. And that's because of all this hard work, 2.5 years worth that you've gotten to at this point. And that's something to commend for. I congratulate you for that, because not many
Thank
people,
you.
not many people can easily say that. And they are still working on themselves 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now.
Mm.
What is your best piece of advice to somebody that wants to start this journey today? They might not have the resources to be able to work with somebody like you or me. They are just trying to just make it day by day, trying to figure out what is their place on this earth. They're trying to transform themselves. What's one small thing that they could do to start changing that mindset today? I know that's a big ask, and there's so many different choices to choose from, but in your experience, what do you think?
In my experience, because I work so much with joy, and I've mentioned the word joy so much at this point, I think if anyone were to take a shot every time I say the word joy, they'd be blind drunk under the table by this point.
It'd be a drinking game, right? Yeah. I'm not advocating for drinking, by the way, my listeners. Please don't read into between the lines of that. But anyway,
I would say that my process that has been the most life transforming for me is that I learned that joy is the way our soul communicates with us because it's our natural state. And so every single time you follow your joy, it is going to synchronistically trigger a set of events. Because every single time you feel joyful, you feel inspired. You want to go do something. And if you allow yourself to just go and do that thing, it will take you to the next breadcrumb. And if you just allow yourself to follow that breadcrumb whilst at the same time being completely detached from the outcome and allowing each experience to just be that experience, it is going to lead you to be in a position where you're able to receive your higher purpose, because I think that's what we all really want. We want to have direction. We want to have purpose. And following your joy is the most supportive, most abundant path for you to achieve that. And the thing is, what's really interesting is that there will be several layers to this. You're going to find your direction. You're going to find your purpose, right? And that can look like a career, or that can look like a life path, or whatever it is. But when you get to that point, you're going to realize that you're just here to have fun. And the purpose, this career or this work is just one aspect of it. But you're just here to have fun. And the deeper you go, the more you access your soul, the more you access your frequency, you'll realize that you're just here to do this because you want to. You're just here to do this life on earth because you want to.
those are some wise words. I have more thoughts with that, but before I say them, to wrap us up, Andrea, why don't you give our audience a few minutes here? I'll let you have those to describe your coaching. People might be interested. I did not mention until just now, although I'll list it later on, about the fact that you are an international guest. You're living in the great old country of Australia, which I've always enjoyed my Australian guests. You are no exception to that. But I'm wondering if you could let people know how they can get in contact with you. If they are interested in coaching, maybe there's some way that they can get in touch. Maybe you want to describe a little bit of some of your coaching offerings, although I hinted at this a little bit earlier. Maybe you also want to leave us some social media that we can follow you on. But with all those things, I'll give you the last few minutes to share all that with us.
Okay, so the best first step to do would be to go to my website, www.andreafung.com. I trust that, Josh, you have all of the links to my socials at this point, which will be listed. Have a look at that and see what it is that actually appeals to you. The best way to work with me is I have packages of 3 sessions, 6 sessions, or it could be 3 months or 6 months. But I would always start with a 3-session energy healing first, because With those ones, we will be able to see whether we jive, how well we actually work together. And it will be the part where we start getting energetically intimate with each other, to put it in plain terms. And so with that one, with the starting point, it's about identifying one particular problem, one particular fear, and we completely address that, we eliminate that, we shift that, and then from that point onwards, we'll see what is the next level of ascension. Another way to contact me, to access my content, would be through Instagram. That would be the best way to contact me. And if you are a burnt out, stressed out corporate professional or soulful entrepreneur, and you're looking for more, you want to experience a life of joy. This is not about selling you wealth or fame or abundance or whatever. I'm talking about accessing your soul and embodying that soul frequency and awakening to the joy that is within you towards finding your higher purpose. If that is something that appeals to you, if that's something that speaks to you, if you're receiving this transmission, then get in contact. I would love to get to know you.
I think they heard you loud and clear. I will put everything in the episode notes for sure. I'm going to leave this with this note. I have to. I feel it's an obligation. You said something about not only joy, but about finding that way to have fun. And you remind me of a guest named Pierrette who talked about the concept of happiness when I had her on the show. That's really what we're ultimately striving towards. But the one thing that you added an extra layer to that I wish that I would have dug in with Pierrette was the fact that you are doing this in a way that unlocks people's ability to see inside themselves, not just the best version, which I would describe it as, but the way that you describe on your website, perpetual transformation and empowerment. And I think that's where we find our joy, when we have that perpetuality and that curiosity to seek it out. You have sought it out. Once a lawyer, turn into many other hats into what you're doing now, Andrea. I freaking love it so much. You, like I said, remind me of who I wanted to be, but turned into something else. I got there. It took me way longer than less than a year. It took me 14 years, but it got me to where I'm at now. And for all those reasons, thanks for being a version of myself, Andrea. Thanks for being on Speaking from the Heart. I am so happy for you, and I only wish you so much more success in your business and beyond. And from one international coach to another international coach, thank you for all you're doing to help others find their joy.
Thank you, Josh, for creating this platform and for creating this space to allow your guests to be seen and heard, and also to allow everyone else listening to your podcast who resonate with the messages and the wisdom shared to feel seen and heard. Because on this journey of personal development, sometimes we feel like we are all so alone, but I think we just need to realize that there are other people who are also going through similar journeys. And it's nice to just have that bit of community, to know that there are other people out there who are feeling the same way, who are going on a similar journey, and that we're all really just walking each other home to ourselves, to joy. So thank you so much for having me here.
Absolutely. And I definitely agree with you. It's a collaborative effort. So thanks again for sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
Again, I want to thank Andrea so much for being part of the show, sharing her energy, which was something that I still feel so empowered, even after all this time, even after all these perspectives that I have learned on the show, and have been able to gain so many different types of perspectives alongside of you, my listeners. I think this episode hits a little bit differently for me today. And I think it's all because I am living in this very moment, this transformation that Andrea has undergone. Because I still, even after all this time, work a full-time job. And I am afraid. I'm afraid of taking that big step forward. Even after everything that I have ever achieved, I know that on the precipice of that threshold that I can cross, I have this ability to be a high-performing, highly energetic leader myself. So Andrea, when you listen to this, thank you so much for being part of this show and inspiring me to keep on walking that path, because I am going to cross that threshold. I'm super excited about it, and I appreciate everything that you have shared with me, even afterwards, that I am going to even share here today for our listeners. So let's break it down. I think that you can learn so much about Andrea's story just because of all the different types of careers that we all have. Sometimes we have these quests that we go on. We're trying to figure out What is the best way to overcome? To be able to learn the ways that we are able to influence others, to find that hobby, to find that knowledge that we are drawing upon in order to help others. It could be in a trade, it could be in a skill, it could be just by helping others with their legal problems. Family law, domestic law, other types of general work, real estate for that matter. Andrea has covered a lot of different territories, but there was one territory that I think really shines brightly for her today, which is the territory of really getting to the heart of why she's doing all this in the first place. And that is to help others. Doing a good job, doing something really well, and giving people that option to know that they're working with somebody that is of a high caliber, a world-class influencer, is certainly a great gold star to put on your resume. But is that simply enough? Is that enough to really cross that threshold, that precipice that I'm talking about even in my own life? I think for all of us, we're trying to design in our lives what it is that we want to measure our success. But success is really by answering the question of why, which beneath the surface is answering yet another question of why are you doing what you're doing. So there's really two layers and even more layers of asking that question of why. But those skills, the life skills that are needed, the things that we engage with, the things that create opportunity means that we have to dig deeper than we might have never thought we could ever dig. Sometimes we want to deal with so many different types of opportunities, getting from point A to point B, but it could be really point A to point Z, which we've talked about on a variety of different episodes here on this podcast, which I encourage you. Go listen to anybody else, and you'll see that it took them so many different types of steps, even for my own journey, even at this point, to be able to finally land on something that I really love doing, which is helping people find their voice. And Andrea is doing just the same, helping other people find that voice. And really, if you can think about it, how many voices does it take for somebody to be propelled upward into this stratosphere so that we can help family relationships, helping people work through their differences, overcoming obstacles that might otherwise never be touched if it wasn't for the power of listening, hearing what other people have to say, and using our voice to change this ever-changing world. I think that what surfaces above all else is that we come from a place of not only wanting to love someone, but also wanting to heal. Because that loving and healing, no matter whether you're a child or you're growing up into the adolescent phase or even becoming an adult, just like we've talked about with the 3-chair model that we had with Jenny Jansen many episodes ago, I think you realize that some of the bad habits, some of the things that we've learned from a long time ago need to break. They need to be shattered, just like a mirror. When you throw it against a wall and it breaks into millions of pieces, it's not because you're going to get bad luck. It's because you're finally destroying that old version of what you've been looking at for so long. There's never really a right moment to actually do that. And even then, for myself, building this business, building my ability to help others, and keep on grinding and working and thinking that I can do so much more means that I know that I might not always be ready for the task. But when I'm faced with it, with no other options, those breadcrumbs start to appear because they've been there this whole entire time. And when you show up with the way in which you have all these wonderful skills, all this knowledge that you've been surfacing, that you've been burying for so long, that's when you are finally realizing that you're designing your life in the way in which you really wanted to achieve. And that achievement is joy. Joy. What a wonderful natural state to be in, to be able to access that on a continuous basis, knowing that you have no more worry whatsoever. If there was any sort of recollection of a moment in time in which you felt that way, maybe it was when you were a child. Maybe the hundreds of things that got piled on as you got older and you had more responsibilities and the things that you had to take care of got buried underneath all the things that you were doing at that time as a kid, creating that connection, getting things done in a way in which really bonded with the human connection and created that joy. I think that in our lives, we have to find ways in which we find feedback, these opportunities for creating those feedback loops, so that we can be here to have fun. Fun is not a word that I would easily associate with my life, and maybe for many of you, you wouldn't associate either. But think about it this way. All this talk that we hear all this time about living your best life, putting all those fears, all those insecurities away, and working on yourself means that you have to focus on not just the journey that you've been walking on, but also helping others to see that they have that freedom, that expression to create opportunities that they would have otherwise not had. I know for many of us, that's easier said than done. That means we have to break the mold that we've been always looking at, making sure that we rip up the playbook, just like we experienced here in the United States with the Super Bowl, which, of course, my hometown heroes, the Philadelphia Eagles, taking that championship, certainly shared a lot of joy for all of us. But what if we were able to take that energy, that momentum, that ability for us to build relationships, regardless of the differences that we might experience, and create joy where joy might not exist for others, or even for our own lives? Andrea and I had a lot of discussions after the show, and even got to the point where she was always asking, are you doing what you really are set out to do? Andrea, I don't know if I am. Even after 194 episodes, I'm still figuring out what that looks like. And I'm still trying to figure out, even in my own life, what it means to work with others to unlock that passion, to let them see that freedom exists. Does that mean that it makes me a fraud of a coach? Absolutely not. Because that means that I have a gift for something else. She has a gift for somebody that is willing to hear what it takes to unlock their freedom. The joy of knowing that you don't have to be stuck in these 2 out of 10 ways. You don't have to be trapped in a dead-end job. You don't have to be stuck in this white-collar, blue-collar atmosphere, knowing that you can do what you really need to do. This world, for many people, is a very scary place nowadays, with a number of different changes, especially in the United States, that have ripple effects across the world. I can understand your sentiment. I can understand why you think that you need to have some deeper skills so that you can transverse these waves. And maybe in this life that you're living in fear, or maybe living in joy currently, can't we all experience the same thing if we're able to put the same energy into celebrating our favorite football team? Maybe even playing a game of sorts that allows us to work on our best habits, to build relationships with others so that that healing and loving that we desperately seek can start today. Those breadcrumbs, those things that maybe are very invisible for us to see at the present time, means that we have to unlock a joyful life. It means that we have to dig deeper than we might have otherwise never dug before. It means that we have to share in our life what it means to have that connection with someone that we deeply care about. Andrea really showed me in this interview today that as I get closer to episode number 200 and I get closer to this freedom that I have in my life, I know that doing a good job, doing something to the best of my own ability, means that I have to dig deep. I have to walk a path that, even though I don't know what that why might be, it might also mean that I have to take a risk, to step outside my own comfort zone, even when all the chips are not aligned, and being able to understand that taking risk can have massive reward. It can pay over hundreds of millions of dollars in dividends, not just in the financial sense, but in the reality that we all live in. I don't know about you, but I think that we are living in a falsehood. We often are viewing the world as if it's all negative, that we don't see sunshine and rainbows sometimes, and that even with the cloudy skies that might be overcast and might be putting us into a different type of mood, just know that joy always exists. We just have to realize that we're here to have fun. We're here to see what it looks like to live this life and realize that even though we have massive responsibilities, whether that's for our kids, our family, or otherwise, being ready is never going to be a reality, because the reality that we're living today allows us to have that freedom. And that freedom is only a hand grasp away, a coaching session away, if you will, or even just acknowledging in your heart, in your soul, that even if you wanted to do a good job, you're already doing it. Press forward. Don't be burned out anymore. Don't let careers or fears or any other sort of inhibition hold you back from the ultimate destiny that you have in front of you, because it's filled with joy, love, and happiness. And even if you think it's all negative and it's all full of anxiety and depression, take it from me, somebody that has lived through some of the worst things that they could ever imagine that the human race could live through. If you can recover from anything that has been really bad in your life, imagine the possibilities of unlocking your true potential through joyful activity and having fun where you otherwise might have never experienced if you didn't open your eyes to these wonderful possibilities that surround us. Thanks for listening to episode number 194 of Speaking from the Heart, and I look forward to hearing from your heart very soon.
Thanks for listening. For more information about our podcast and future shows, search for Speaking from the Heart to subscribe and be notified wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit us at www.yourspeakingvoice.biz for more information about potential services that can help you create the best version of yourself. See you next time.